And so true biblical worship is only for those in the Spirit. Look at verse 17. Here's another wonderful picture God gives us about true biblical worship. It involves seeing and falling before Christ. See in verse 17? When John saw him, he fell. True biblical worship involves seeing, and once you really see Christ, it causes a response. It causes us to bow before him, to fall before him, to realize that he is everything and I am nothing. There's a response. That's why, for we are the circumcision who worship God in the Spirit, rejoice in Christ Jesus, and have no confidence in the flesh, Philippians 3:3. We're smitten because he is so great. When John turns and sees Jesus as the risen King of Kings, he falls before him, verse 17. John fell before Jesus just like Peter fell before Jesus. Do you remember in Luke 5, verses 8 and 9? Peter was a great fisherman. I mean, that was his career. He had that down. And he was coming in his boat, and Jesus was on the shore, and Peter had been out fishing all night long, and Mr. Expert fisherman had caught nothing, and Jesus, before he gets to shore, he says, "Hey, Peter, throw your nets," plural, Luke 5. Throw your nets on the other side of the boat. Peter, only Peter, he's the one that said, "Not so, Lord," in Acts. He really had a problem with being told what to do. And he said, "I fished all night. I know what I'm doing. But if you ask me to," and it says in Luke, he threw his net, one. He had a whole boat of them. Threw one, the boat starts tipping over. Jesus had redirected every fish in the whole Sea of Galilee into his net. And what it says is this, and I'll read it to you in chapter 5 of Luke. It says, when Peter saw it, when he saw that swirling mass of fish right next to the shore, there's no way that they could be stacked up that deep right next to shore. It says, "Depart from me, for I'm a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the fish. Peter fell on his face, just like John did, when he saw Jesus for who he is. Did you know the purpose of worship is not to be entertained and to rate it and it's to come to the place, because it's based on truth and because we're filled with the Spirit, that we come to the place where we see Jesus. And at that moment when we see him, our human, our fleshly abilities, we just melt before him and bow in our hearts. That's true biblical worship. It involves seeing and falling before Christ. John fell before Christ in Revelation 1:17, kind of like all the disciples did on the boat. Do you remember in the book before Luke, in the book of Mark, chapter 4, Jesus had a big day and he had done all this healing and feeding, and he gets in the boat and he says, "Could you guys take me to the other side of the Sea of Galilee?" So he gets there, and as soon as they started, he curls up, finds a soft spot, lays his head down, goes to sleep. And if you read the text, it says that this storm, the Greek word is basanadzo, and it said that the waters were tormented. I mean, the waters were just, every bit of it was just, what it was is the devil saw Jesus asleep and said, "Wow, we can get rid of him. He's going to drown him. We don't need soldiers. We'll drown him." And so he sent this horrific storm to drown Christ. And reminds me, Bonnie says, "Honey, you can sleep through anything." Well, I say it's just like Jesus, He slept through the storm. And so Jesus is sound asleep in this horrible storm, and the disciples are shaking him like this. And it says they feared. They feared the boat was sinking. They woke him up. And so look what it says. It says and I'll just read it to you in Mark 4. It says, "He arose and he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. And he said to them, 'Why are you fearful? How is it you have no faith?'" Verse 41. "And then they feared exceedingly." They were exponentially more afraid after he did that than before, when they were in just the storm. How would you like to have the one who talks to the wind and the waves and the ocean and the storm around you in your boat? I mean, they were ready to jump out of the boat. They were scared. It says exceedingly fearful. They bowed before him. True biblical worship involves seeing and falling before Christ.